Evolution and cancer. Evolution is critical for understanding cancer, and in turn, cancer proves evolution. Well, at least according to the evolutionists. Here is a 2013 paper. It states evolutionary theories are critical for understanding cancer development and for developing effective therapies. Skipping down, the process of mutation and selection are integral to the evolution of cancer at every step of multi-stage carcinogenesis. Skipping down, importantly, the application of evolutionary theory to cancer should engender new treatment strategies that could better control this dreaded disease. Understanding cancer both at the tissue and animal levels demands an evolutionary perspective. Now here's a 2018 paper. It states, there is a growing realization of the importance of evolutionary theory to cancer genomics. Same message here. Cancer is a genetic disease characterized by a progressive accumulation of genomic aberrations. Well, mutations usually is what they mean there. The idea that evolutionary mechanisms underlie cancer progression has become a guiding principle in understanding, predicting, and controlling cancer progression, metastasis, and therapeutic responses. Driver mutations. So cancer cells are hypermutators. They mutate a lot. According to these evolutionists, certain of these mutations are the ones that are causing the cancer. They are the driver mutations. The others are along for the ride, passenger mutations. So they are developing software, they're developing novel algorithms to find the order and timing of these driver mutations. So that's a key concept in this theory of cancer, this evolutionary theory of cancer, driver mutations. So to review what we've seen here, these evolutionists are saying that evolution is critical to understanding cancer. Random mutations and natural selection are key to every step of carcinogenesis. They have this somatic mutation theory of cancer, which states that cancer is caused by mutations in somatic cells, and understanding cancer demands an evolutionary perspective. Cancer is a genetic or evolutionary disease, and there are these driver mutations that cause cancer. Evolution is critical for developing cancer therapies. Joshua Swamidass has developed these ideas in detail. He believes that cancer provides strong evidence for evolution. He's written this paper, Cancer and Evolution. It states evolutionary theory makes sense of cancer, and cancer makes sense of evolution too. Now, I should point out that Swamidass's paper has been criticized by Jonathan Wells, but Wells focused in on one particular aspect of Swamidass's paper. Swamidass's paper writes, our understanding of both cancer and evolution are intertwined. So you can think of it as this going back and forth. Evolution is critical to understanding cancer, but cancer provides powerful evidence for evolution in turn. Evolutionary theory makes sense of cancer, giving us critical insight into how it works. This is important. You have to have evolution. In cancer, we can directly verify that evolutionary theory correctly reconstructs a cancer's history, including its ancestry. We see all the same patterns in cancer evolution that we do in the evolution of species: neutral drift, nested clades, novel functions, and positive selection. The same math, software, and theory that is used to study the evolution of species works for cancer too. That's a very key point he's making, and there's then followed by an even bigger point. If evolutionary theory is wrong about the origin of species, why does it work so well for cancer? From a biological point of view, it is now clear that cancer is an evolutionary disease. Evolution, it turns out, is a much more useful framework for understanding cancer. And cancer demonstrates how evolution works at a genetic level. Cancer biologists often talk about driver and passenger mutations. The driver mutations are the ones that cause cancer by conferring new abilities on the cancer cells. It bears repeating. The exact same math, software, and theory that so accurately reconstructs a cancer's history is also used to reconstruct the evolutionary history of species. Phylogenetics is powerful because there is so much historical information in genetic data. This information traces the ancestry of cancer cells. For example, one study used phylogenetics to map the ancestry of cells in a colon with a large tumor. The genetic mutations in the colon are in a nested clade pattern, exactly as evolution predicts. We see convergent evolution of species 2. At a functional level, bat and bird wings are a type of structural and functional convergence. So are the wide variety of eyes that we find in nature, where we frequently observe structural and functional convergences. So he's drawing this parallel between the convergences observed in cancer and those between the species. Evolution sometimes shows convergence on a molecular level as well. Some see convergence as evidence against evolution. Cancer, however, empirically demonstrates that evolutionary processes do converge to similar solutions. A detailed look at cancer leaves us with some important conclusions. Without doubt, evolution makes sense of cancer. Understanding evolution is centrally important in medical research. Fundamentally, cancer is an evolutionary disease. It only arises because life evolves. Fundamentally, cancer is an evolutionary disease. Keep that in mind. It arises only because life evolves. This is all false. This is all phony science. Now, first, recall that convergent evolution argument. Cancer exhibits convergent evolution, therefore convergence occurs by chance, so it is not a problem for evolution for convergence to occur by chance. Simply put, cancer does it, so evolution can do it. Well, not so fast. Here's a paper from 2020 looking at this problem of convergence in cancer. De novo lethal cancer evolves capacities for both metastasis and resistance. Therefore, cancers in different patients appear to follow the same eco-evolutionary path that independently manifests in affected patients. This convergent outcome that always includes the ability to metastasize and exhibit resistance demands an explanation beyond the slow and steady accrual of stochastic mutations. In other words, no, it's not cutting it. The random mutation model, the evolutionary model that this just happens by chance, it isn't cutting it. The convergence is too striking in the cancer examples. Demands an explanation beyond the slow and steady accrual of mutations. In other words, convergence in cancer does not appear to support interspecific convergences as Swamidass claims. But it gets worse. Recall this passage from the Swamidass paper. We see convergent evolution of species 2. At a functional level, bat and bird wings are a type of structural and functional convergence. Wait a minute. We see convergent evolution? I hope a red flag went up for you. No, we don't see convergent evolution. Evolutionists are forced to infer convergent evolution. Why? Because the species do not fall into the common descent pattern. Convergence has been a problem for evolution ever since George Mivart pointed it out in 1871, and Darwin failed to resolve the problem. And later evolutionists have likewise failed to solve the problem. Let's move on because it gets worse still. Skipping down here in the Swamidass paper, the genetic mutations in the colon are in a nested clade pattern, exactly as evolution predicts. Exactly as evolution predicts? Now wait a minute, there's another red flag here. So what's wrong with this claim? The finding of a patient's cancer cells forming a nested hierarchy is helpful, of course, but it is not some kind of remarkable finding. We know what we're looking at here. Furthermore, this is not a prediction of evolution. If it was, then evolution would be false, because the species and their designs do not fall into a nested hierarchy pattern. Bottom line here, the claim that cancer cells forming a nested hierarchy is some sort of powerful confirmation of evolution is deeply confused. But according to Swamidass, we have this kind of heads I win, tails you lose, because if the cancer cells fall into a nested hierarchy, then it proves evolution. But if the cancer shows convergence, then it still proves evolution. So first, evolution predicts a nested hierarchy, but then second, it also predicts convergence. But it gets worse, because all these arguments, that is, evolution is critical to understanding cancer, random mutation and natural selection are key to every step of carcinogenesis, cancer is caused by mutations in somatic cells, understanding cancer demands an evolutionary perspective, Cancer is a genetic evolutionary disease. There are these driver mutations causing cancer, and evolution is critical for developing cancer therapies. In other words, you have this evolution is critical to understanding cancer, and cancer provides powerful evidence for evolution. All these arguments do not do well. The search for those driver mutations has repeatedly come up empty, and evolutionary-based therapies have been elusive. Millions of people continue to die each year. Why is that? Evolutionists insist cancer is an evolutionary disease not because of the evidence, but in spite of the evidence. Because for evolutionists, the genome has primacy. Here is a recent paper that calls out many of the questionable assumptions associated with this evolutionary viewpoint. This paper reviews several questionable assumptions that have been imposed on the cancer research. Questionable assumption number 7, somatic and germline mutations are responsible for the origin of cancer. There are irreconcilable inconsistencies challenging the somatic mutation theory as a credible explanation for the origin of cancer. Nuclear cytoplasm transfer experiments demonstrated that oncogenic transformation is ultimately mediated by mitochondrial function, not by genetic drivers. Cytoplasmic mitochondrial factors were able to initiate tumorigenesis in the absence of nuclear drivers like mutations, and mutations did not initiate tumorigenesis in the presence of normal cytoplasmic factors. Although specific mutations may be considered secondary risk factors, they are neither necessary nor sufficient for tumorigenesis, while mitochondrial insufficiency, coupled to compensatory upregulation of cytosolic and mitochondrial substrate level phosphorylation, appear both necessary and sufficient for tumorigenesis, independent of mutational background. It is unclear how the somatic mutation theory could persist as a credible explanation for the origin of cancer, considering the numerous inconsistencies with the theory. Well, I think the answer is evolutionary pressure. As all major cancers express abnormalities in mitochondria structure and function, regardless of the presence or absence of gene mutations, we consider oxidative phosphorylation inefficiency with compensatory substrate level phosphorylation as the common metabolic phenotype of all major cancers. The failure to reduce cancer deaths results in large part from the persistent belief that cancer is a genetic or evolutionary disease, according to the somatic mutation theory. Here's another recent paper, The End of the Genetic Paradigm of Cancer. The data continue to produce findings that challenge the idea that cancer is a, quote, genetic disease, as posited by the somatic mutation theory. It is said that the wise only believe in what they can see, and fools only see what they can believe in. There's a little frustration going on here. The propensity of the human mind to cling to simple, mechanistically plausible explanations further promoted narratives of oncogenic driver mutations. They obviously are arguing against that in this paper. The somatic mutation theory and its tacit claim to represent the truth on the origin of cancer is concisely articulated in this quotation by Stratton and Alexandrov from a decade ago. Quote, "All cancers originate from a single cell that starts to behave abnormally due to the acquired somatic mutations in its genome," 2014, and still today, I might add. Knowing the mutational profile of a patient's tumor genome has yielded little benefit in, quote, personalized precision cancer care. There are many inconvenient findings that are being overlooked. Many cancers harbor no consistent driver mutations, while canonical oncogenic mutations are found in tissues that remain cancer-free. To revisit the role of mutations in carcinogenesis, we need to recall the central corollary of the cancer genetics paradigm that links somatic mutations to the cancer phenotype and cancer progression, namely the idea of somatic Darwinian evolution of the mutated cells. This is exactly what we saw earlier, this linking of evolution and cancer. This neo-Darwinian scheme is applied to tumors in a loose, qualitative, if not figurative, manner. The concept of carcinogenesis as an explicit process of evolution in the neo-Darwinian sense was popularized in 1976, and I might add has continued very strongly since then by evolutionists. Yet convenient for its simplicity but misleading in its meaning, the neo-Darwinian principle has become the unquestioned truth in tumor biology, which is responsible for many of the problems in the genetic paradigm of cancer. The somatic mutation theory suffers from the same shortcoming as neo-Darwinian evolution, in that it only explains distinct localized adaptive traits obviously linked to the selection pressure, but not the emergence of complex, higher-order biological functions. Let's repeat that. In other words, neo-Darwinian evolution does not explain the emergence of complex, higher-order biological functions. Of course, that's been well known for a long time, but it's nice to see it in print. As Philip Ball points out, the apparent lack of progress in the biological sciences may be related to the adoption of what? A mistaken paradigm. Ideas have consequences. The genetic paradigm of cancer is a vague theory, and as physicist Richard Feynman stated, vague theories cannot be disproven. Indeed, evolution is critical for understanding cancer, and cancer proves evolution. What am I saying here? I'm repeating what we started with, as you will recall. This is the claim. Over and over and over again, evolutionists insist evolution is required to understand cancer, and cancer helps to prove evolution. Religion drives science, and it matters.